So on behalf of the Presbytery of the Highlands of New Jersey, I want to welcome everybody to this workshop on virtual stewardship campaigns. And I could probably say a few things about this, but you didn't come here to hear me. You came here to hear Ellie Johns Kelly and Carl Madison speak about this from the Presbyterian Foundation. So I want to welcome the two of you and thank you all for coming and being willing to give this presentation. I did happen to see it when the foundation had their Stewardship Day, and was a wonderful presentation, which is why we wanted to be able to try and bring it to more people who may not have seen it that first time around. So with that, I want to welcome everyone and turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you so much. We are thrilled to be with you today. So Carl and I have looked back at stewardship over the past year, and we've been able to distill major challenges into 5 lessons that we can carry forward. But before we start, a couple of comments. It's probably obvious, but this is mostly tactical, about lessons learned and what to do next. We are targeting a wide variety or a wide breadth of church sizes and bandwidths. So we hope that it is clear that there are far too many great ideas for the average church to implement. We will run through a lot of these great ideas so that you can pick out the ones that are the right fit for your congregation and your abilities. And when we get to the end of this presentation, we'll have a time for question and answers too. So feel free to ask questions or put something in the chat box, and we'll have Steve monitor that for us. But we'll also have time at the end for that too. So let's first set the context. Our churches have been pushed unbearably hard.
So thanks, Ellie. We're going to start off naming some of these unbearably hard hurdles that have really changed each one of our stewardship worlds. First, it seems silly to even have to name it, but COVID. Just over a year ago, this pandemic spread around the world within weeks. And to dampen the impacts of this pandemic and to figure out a solution, entire countries shut down. You know, in the United States, there are estimates that we've had up to 33 million cases and have surpassed now 581,000 deaths. This has been earth-shaking for everyone. 35% of Americans, I think by now, are vaccinated. That's just a recent figure that I've read. But there's still some concerns about, slowing trends for vaccinations and variants that might be causing us some concern. So we're not really out of the woods yet. So the next challenge that we've been facing is this financial impact. At first, all of our financial and labor markets just were slammed. We were all together sliding uncontrollably down this slope, again, together. But there's been a split since fairly soon after that big slide. Our higher income earners stabilized pretty early in the process, and they've even had a real tailwind because the stock markets have recovered to all-time highs. So I put up here something to just prove that out. If you're a stock market watcher like I am, this week has been, I guess, anxiety producing or an opportunity to buy, maybe. We could look at it different ways. But still, over the past 2 years, look at this. Even despite the numbers that have dropped so precipitously this week, these numbers point to a remarkable 2-year increase. The S&P is up 44% in 2 years. The NASDAQ is higher at 65%. The Dow is around 32%. And that's despite the fact that we've gone through this massive pandemic. Many of our neighbors, though, have kept stable employment. They've had that tailwind of the markets. They haven't had many expenses, and it's just been a rising opportunity, but many of those have had a great opportunity to be generous. but many have been absolutely slammed by this. Lower wage workers have been hit much harder by unemployment. And generally, they do not have the same investments that they can sit on top of that have been thriving. Workers in the bottom quartile of earnings, which is under 27,000, they've experienced an unemployment drop of almost 20%. That is mind-blowing. While those with over $60,000 income have a less than a 1% employment drop. So in the study that I've put up on the screen now, this pie chart shows how Americans have used our stimulus checks. That gray slice of pie right there represents 30% of our neighbors who needed those checks just to make ends meet, just to survive this. While that the blue slice of pie shows about 40% of our neighbors who are relatively fine. It's been an unpleasant experience, but this stimulus has actually served as more of a windfall, going into savings or paying down debt. So the bottom line is the pandemic has magnified our wealth gap. Now we have both those struggling to get by and those who have more than they have.
And now far more pervasive is the crisis of loneliness. It had already been called out as a major issue within our current culture. Yet social distancing has forced physical separation on all of us from friends, neighbors, and family. And even as some of us move back to some in-person activities with vaccination, others are still at risk and holding back, and those with young children might not want to engage until they can get their kids vaccinated as well. The challenge is extreme for all, but for some, it's much more acute than others. All of these factors made 2020 the most challenging for our church and our stewardship. And for many of us, this has been our church this past year, right here, sitting on our computer. This is our pew, and this is our offering plate.
So this absence from one another has presented this unparalleled challenge from a stewardship and generosity perspective. There are inherent risks that will continue to stay with us through 2021 and possibly, if not probably beyond, as we continue virtual worship. I know my church is only considering hybrid right now, but that nature of worship and connection brings certain risks. One of them is that many of us in the pews will not be witnessing that things are happening since we are still not together at worship. We still aren't with one another on that regular basis. Many will not be present to contribute through the offering plate. That is still continuing today. Many will remain financially uncertain. They will perhaps even feel poor from job loss or financial market volatility that we're witnessing constantly, especially this week, while many are still going to have much more ability than they had before. These new challenges are going to linger with us for some time to come.
In today's conversation, we are sharing what we've learned from our experiences, from our colleagues and our churches. Here's our agenda for today, 5 lessons. Lesson 1 is the umbrella topic, year-round stewardship. You've heard me talk about it before, and we're going to hit it home again. Under that umbrella is really a circular process of the next 4 lessons. First, show what the gifts have done and what they will do, how folks' investment has made a difference for mission and ministry. Second, invite members to contribute their energy to this ministry. Third, make available the proper tools so that they can give conveniently what works for them as the donor. And fourth, focus on saying thank you and appreciate them for their generosity of time, talent, and resource. Then you start it all over, and we'll wrap up with some of those resources.
So most churches, which some colleagues and I surveyed towards the I don't want to say towards the end of the pandemic, but in the most recent surveys that we did, show that a digital presence is going to continue to play some role in future ministries. The surveys that we did showed about 70% of respondents anticipate some balance of in-person and digital ministries going forward. So especially for those churches taking advantage of virtual worship and connection, the year-round stewardship campaign is going to be a really critical piece for maintaining all of these connections and touches. And here's why. We as the church have always had this natural, very organic engagement cycle built in. Our togetherness, us being with one another at worship weekly, and the meetings that we hold have actually served, albeit accidentally, as this brilliant cycle of stewardship, of witness, to see the things that we are doing, of then giving to those good things that we're doing, and then of this appreciation for doing all of these things. Once you take out that togetherness that is just a part of our core, we fracture and disconnect all of those organically working parts. So now with this physical distance, like those in the nonprofit fundraising world, we're now having also to be very intentional to show, to invite, to make doorways for our members to give and to thank, because those points of engagement, which were organically happening, are not otherwise happening. So we're going to walk through each one of these now in more depth.
And it starts with show. Show what the past gifts have done. Show folks what future gifts will do. And this practice is one that needs to stick around long after our time living in a pandemic. Let's demonstrate how amazing our generous givers have had impact through gifts to this ministry. What a great idea their gift was, and how wonderful their next gift will be. Let's talk about 4 ways to show what impact gifts have had.
Let's start right off with this number one, the priority tool. It's a narrative budget. This is an outstanding tool to tell the story of your year. Many are going to be surprised that a budget is a great storytelling tool for the congregation, but the story is told by a narrative budget. It's not the line item budget. That's a different tool. I come from the banking world originally, so I kind of love the line item side of it, but I get that most people are going to glaze over. So here's what that narrative budget means as opposed to the line item. You know, according to a line item budget, let's look on the left of your screen where it says facts and figures. Just change that to say 7 people, 1 dog, and 1 car. That's a line item budget. Extremely simplified. There might be some other assets to write, but this is an accurate, if not responsible, account. Now, look over on the right side of the screen. I'm going to say the same thing. The same budget, same details, but you see the people. You know their names. You remember in this picture probably smells, not all of them awesome, some of them great, but there's some nostalgia there perhaps. And there's some joy on some faces. You imagine where they're going. You imagine that they've been on this trip for perhaps every year. You know that each one of them will probably do all they can to go again next year. And they'll plan for the future on how perhaps their children and their children's children can be a part of what's happening too. So we need that kind of narrative budget in stewardship so that we feel what happened. It shows things that the budget traditional line item cannot show. It shows love. It might show loss. It might show that we've been doing this for an extended period and how we plan for this to keep going in the future.
Do you need something simpler? We have a way you can create a pamphlet to share with the congregation how the gifts were used, and what impact occurred because of it. And there are a lot of great examples out there. If this is new to you, remember you have me. I am your ministry relations officer. Call me. I'll also have my number in the chat for you, but we'll make it available. But I am your number one go-to person. And I'm glad to speak with you and be of support to you. But we also have a great resource that's online that can help you produce or see very basic examples. As we go to this next example, it's one that was created by Clinton Presbyterian Church in Clinton, New Jersey. And what I love, Clinton does a great job every year with their narrative budget. It looks different every year too, but always an outstanding job. But with this last one, they talked about what happened in 2020. They worshiped in a new way. They cared from a distance. They loved with abundance. And then they were able to show, as you see on the right-hand side, how their budget broken out covers these different areas of ministry. Now, the only thing I would do differently is they have facility and grounds listed separate as a pie. I would divide that, bit of a guesstimate, but divide that accordingly to those other 4 sectors, because then it helps people see how the building and grounds are really used for mission and ministry. So great example. And I'm happy to share other examples with you, but Clinton does a great job year in and year out with their narrative budget. And I'm happy to get some to you if that's useful.
Yeah, wonderful. It's just wonderful. So here's another way to tell about impact. Say it face to face. Well, perhaps continuously on video for the time being, if that's what you need to do. But especially recently, we still need to tell that story that without being together in person, members are not witnessing all that's happening. The church might still feel closed. Members need to hear what they can't see. That ministry did happen this past year, but it just happened in new ways. Perhaps it happened more than ever. That this past year has not been a year of rest. We've been doing amazing things, but we've had to reinvent how to do them totally differently. And all of this innovation, which is not totally our skill set, right? All of this innovation and adapting and continuation of ministry is possible because of our collective generosity. So we need to celebrate that impact, and we need to brag a little bit. Hard to do, but we need to brag about what we've done. Here's a sample right here. This is actually one I put together with the director of music at our church, just a quick video. It's where we were sharing this contradiction of the emptiness of the church versus all that's actually going on within because of those people who have been so generous to continue doing the ministry, even though we cannot see it. So like many of you, we also have done some great mission videos to demonstrate impact is happening, and also some connectional videos to make sure that people still see each other and know about what each other's going on. It's a pretty fun series for us to do.
And don't assume anyone knows what is going on, ever. Your congregation is doing so many things that are subtle and under the radar. And we don't have a marketing department to seek, find, and celebrate these little things. Think about how to connect members with the impact that we cannot see and quantify what is happening. Make us feel the peace that someone felt that happened because of us. Show us the hug we made possible, the hunger we helped solve, the faith that we helped grow.
And share it in very frequent and short blurbs and articles. I think we're all at our max bandwidth these days. So the more text we put together, the less likely it's going to get read. I'm sorry. So remind them constantly that they are the why this could be happening. Do it in the bulletin, through newsletter articles, minutes for mission, offering talks. You don't have to do all of these. Decide where it is that your church shares information and just drop these very simple, short things in there.
Now that we are showing that this ministry is an outstanding place for our members to do ministry, it is the perfect time to invite them. They are uplifted and feeling giving as an opportunity, not an obligation. It's truly the moment to invite them to take action. Here are 4 places we can place an invitation, going from simple and fast to more invested and intentional.
So the simplest and easiest invitations are these one-liners. Drop them in everywhere you've just shown impact. It's the next step that readers expect. Without saying this depends on us, come on and join us, the reader might assume that once you've shown impact, that the mission is accomplished, that nothing else is needed. We've just solved that problem. If it's not been solved, put that invitation in there so that people know that they can be a part of continuing this. Drop it in every time we show that we did this great thing. Like we fed 50 people. We had 50 attend virtual worship. We served this community. We solved this problem. Punctuate it with, it's because of you. And we can do that again. So messaging this usually reads best when it's an uplifting call to action, like this depends on you and me. It's us. We're making this happen. Or to make more of this happen, join us. Or you can make a difference here. Click here and consider your gift. That's more of the invitation to opportunity instead of sometimes we might just ask for money. Give us money, that kind of thing. I know that no one's that brazen, but that optimistic invitation is remarkably welcome. Here's the next, during offertory, when we return to worship in person, extend this invitation during the worship service and have a constant physical presence for this invitation, a place that the church can receive offering in the future. The concept of this offering box that we have on the screen right now might help. It's just an idea, as most of the churches that we surveyed are still seeking alternatives or options to passing the offering plate, at least on a temporary basis.
Since most of us are still not worshiping in person still, even after the Great Return, a significant majority that we have surveyed expect to continue online worship presence as well. So for those, this keyboard continues to be today's offering plate. In online worship, the offertory is of the utmost importance. Be intentional. Use this time to share an offering, talk, or video, and then repeat the cycle. Show what the gifts have done. Invite viewers to join in giving to power this ministry. Thank them for their generosity. It's because of them that this is possible. And then pray over the offering. To step it up, make it simple to make a gift. This is just about making a door for them to open. This is not complex rocket science. It's basically providing the doorways that visitors expect to make a gift. And here are ultra simple solutions. 1, give should always be at the top of your menu on your website. As web users, we have been conditioned to expect this. You're not being greedy for putting it up there. State that the online offering is available for those of us who usually use this offering plate. 3, provide a QR code. You can get on in 30 seconds. You can get one in 30 seconds and it's free. Or if you're using our service, you got a QR code when you signed up. Your administrators have that on their email. Yes, QR codes have made a comeback and people actually use them. By placing a QR code here in your slideshow for worship, enables your visitors to use their mobile device to scan and make a gift instead of clicking away from your worship service, making the gift and then struggling to get back to worship. And 4, it's still worth putting the expected give now button or text to give invitation down here, as you see, because it's where your visitors expect it to be as well.
Fantastic, yeah. So that give now button that Ellie was just referencing might bring your viewer to a general giving opportunity page, just like this one right here. I'll expand it. It's right on. Notice that that donate online button is at the top. Once they get there, that's what the visitor expects. And they can click on that and be whisked away to your online giving provider. More on that in a little bit. But for now, there's more. You want to highlight, if at all possible, the other common ways to give, according to whatever your members are most likely to want to see, so that they don't have to go further and search for it. The bottom line here is that you choose a layout that prioritizes the most frequently needed items in the highest priority space on your giving page. And most of us, I just highlighted with this orange arrow, most of us still need to accept those gifts of cash and checks. Give it top billing, because we don't ever want to remove or demote your check writers. I am not a check writer, but most people I know are. They're very often are incredibly significant givers. Recurring gifts and online banking are very, very important to highlight in most churches. So put them in there. Give them a link to know where to go next. Yeah, and so you can also put varying content in here, like a pledge link for the fall. In plain giving, it might be in a lower space, but always present. Everyone needs to be seeing this whenever their eyes pass over this page. Its recurring visibility is subtle, but it's very helpful. And lastly, make this page very fast to read. Copious amounts of text are actually counterproductive. This page is a tool. It's somewhere that a visitor comes to get something. It's not a stewardship education resource. Some churches might choose for that to be, and that's their decision, but that's not the expectation for when a user's coming to get something. So whenever possible, use big icons, big buttons, and large text for your titles.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing my slide.
It's no problem. It's a big blank slide.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I am. Sermons, if you only do one thing for stewardship, we ask that you preach on it. What you say as a preacher influences us in the pews immensely, or in our lounge chairs at home. And when the topic of money goes unsaid, it goes unheard. Without it, we, the congregation, are flying solo in how to view money in our lives. And it's an area where the right thing doesn't normally come naturally. You know, Bill Enright likes to say that if you only preach on stewardship once a year, all people are going to hear is that it's about money. You need to preach on it regularly so that they hear it's about mission and ministry. And if you are uncomfortable talking about money, you are not alone. Not one of us is comfortable if we perceive ourselves as begging or asking for our own salaries. If you get that, this will be a great read for you, A Spirituality of Fundraising, and it's under $10 and it's a fast read. You can order it online from your favorite local bookseller or wherever you like to buy your books.
So after making that invitation, we absolutely must give our visitor or the reader that next place to step. Where do I step next to take action? So plate revenue has turned off for most of us. So we need to create more of doorways, like Ellie was just talking about. We need to have those other doorways for giving, because this is where it gets real. You know, prior to COVID, this study, according to the National Study of Congregations' Economic Practices, it's a mouthful. That study indicated that 78% of gifts are given during a worship service. So imagine having no worship service means closing the door to 78% of revenue for the foreseeable future. We got to make another door.
And already cashless transactions have been outpacing cash and checks rapidly. In this graph, notice how trends in payments for debit and credit cards are the real movers for the last 20 years. Certainly, keep offering to receive checks, but open the doors to card transactions as well. Without the offering plate, this past year has only served to supercharge the use of electronic transactions. Data is not available for every church's online giving, but we can show our own experience at the foundation for those who use our service. And within this chart, you can see that churches using the Presbyterian Foundation online giving platform quadrupled in giving volume just from the previous year. The process of providing online giving is actually quite simple. In fact, at the Presbyterian Foundation, you saw I mentioned it in the chat, we have partnered with the Vanco, a leader in the industry, to provide this to Presbyterian churches. And it's much cheaper to go through us than through Vanco directly. It's a great program to give on your own computer.
Computer, and it needs to be easily accessed on a mobile phone. It's just imperative. So remember how we just talked about a QR code a while ago, and the Give Now button, and that giving URL, that giving address. I'll state it again, what these are. Clearly, these are other doorways that people are accustomed to. We've been acclimated to expect those as our doorways into doing any transaction everywhere else. We expect it for the church as well. So think of each of these as a doorway we can put everywhere that we talk about impact. Every time we show that impact, someone's excited, invite them saying, here's the door, tap on this, and you're doing the next generous thing. Otherwise, the doorway is at the computer, or it's at their checkbook, or at the offering plate. These are all fine and good and important. I don't mean to dismiss their importance one bit, but none of those things, checkbook, computer, or offering plate, are in hand at the moment of inspiration and invitation. So without that doorway in hand, that mobile phone, which I would count most of us during the day have this within 2 feet. Without that, with that in hand, each of us, without that in hand, each of us has to remember to be generous later in that day or that week when we come to one of those more traditional doorways. And sure, many of us are going to remember, but you get the concept though, right? It's that many don't remember. We're just talking about eliminating that distance between that inspiration and invitation and then making the gift. Online giving has been this lead topic for the past year, but if you at your church have the bandwidth, do let your membership and visitors know about other important ways they can give to your ministry, either verbally or in bulletins or on your website. Appreciated securities, IRA distributions, qualified IRA distributions, and donor advised funds are extremely important and very relevant tools to many in your congregation. And they are making those gifts. They may be doing it to your church already. They may be giving them elsewhere, but these are happening all the time now. They often don't think to give them to the church, but if you let them know you are delighted to accept these, they're some of the best opportunities out there for your membership.
Now let's tie all of this together with the final step of the cycle, gratitude for generosity. It's so important because most of the time, most are not there in person to witness on a recurring basis what is happening in our church. When we are together, are immersed in the wonderful things, and we get that affirmation, that part we played making all these ministries work was really important. We understand that. And we kind of generate that self-thank you on our own. But in the lower level of engagement, that self-appreciation is just not happening. So as far as lessons learned goes, this is a big one. We all pretty much know we should be appreciating much more intentionally. Thanking is intentional and deserves a system.
So yeah, we'll need to pick out and assign some of us in the congregation responsibility for thanking, a thank team and a system, so that we know that it happens reliably, because trying really hard without a system in place doesn't usually pan out. In fact, it rarely does pan out. So this doesn't need to be hard. You'll probably want to start with something manageable. So let's breeze through some great examples of trigger events in the discipline of thanking. We'll break this down into 3 times when we thank. There's annually, quarterly, and then on a rolling basis.
Annual gratitude might be in a year-end letter. And a couple of ways you could go with this. First, thanking for past year giving and thanking folks for their coming pledge or their estimate of giving. And toward the end of the year, it's the culmination of the generosity season and pledge season. And so we have a lot to work with here. It might also be a thank you for pledging for the coming year. And also remember to thank them when you tell them what they've given. The quarterly statement of giving is already a reliable system for most of our churches. Why don't we just add a thank you here and tell them about that impact? A real bonus is that it moves the sense that the statement of giving is more of a financial transaction. It's really not a warm, fuzzy report, but you can add that warmth and connection with a note or a letter. I love this sample here from First Pres Brooklyn. It theologically may be in a different place than your church is. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Read it. See how they tell the story of how they're doing ministry, the vignettes they add. But what I really love about their quarterly letters, with that storytelling, they always say, enclosed is your statement. Please review it for accuracy. If you'd like to bring your estimate of giving up to date, we're glad to receive it. If life has changed and you're not able to meet the estimate that you originally proposed, simply let us know. And if you're in a season of fruitfulness and you think you can do more, we're always glad to receive those extra gifts for the sake of mission and ministry. And so I love that it's permission giving, it's storytelling, and it's greater encouragement too.
So when it comes to thanking throughout the year, this is that rolling basis. There's unlimited great ideas out there. We're going to try to keep it simple with just a few common ones to keep this cadence of gratitude rolling throughout your year. Every week in worship, this is the simplest place to drop a thank you every week, especially at the start of the offering. Many times you might have an offering talk where the thank you is followed by an impact story or some reflections from words from scripture. Every week in the bulletin or newsletter, it's a quick and simple way to drop thank you for gifts that you are sharing with this congregation to do God's work here. It's simple, it's short, it's another place where you envelop the congregation in this culture of appreciation. And this does have an impact. So every week or month, this is a great one, but it's more work. But it is so uplifting. Engage this thank you team to be ready to write a quick thank you note. Most of your thank you team will usually not know or have access to dollar amounts that people have given or that they're writing to thank for, but they can still express that gratitude for the gift nevertheless. Here's 2 ways that this works great. First, you can send a handwritten note to everyone in the congregation throughout the year, dividing them up evenly through the months. A session and a pastor might divide these amongst themselves to make it easy. Second, you could send thank you notes triggered by unexpected gifts, for example. Any major or out of the ordinary contribution should trigger a special note from your thank you team. You can decide what that trigger would be for a personal note. Is it gifts over a specific amount? What is it in your church that's going to earn that thank you note? I think every gift certainly should earn it, but some we really do need that gratitude, need to send that gratitude. And set up a process. It's extremely high impact people will talk about it because it's unexpected at a church and people love it when it happens. So there it is. We've just done this full circle. It was a sprint, admittedly. We put a lot in here for our 5 lessons learned from the pandemic, and they're pretty elementary. There's not a lot of stuff that's shocking. A lot of it, fortunately, is very comfortable for us because it's things we've seen. It's just a discipline that we need to instill. But so that we don't leave you overwhelmed, as we wind down our time together, we want to share with you a few resources so that you're not on your own for what's the next step for you. Here's 3 quick ones, and I'd really like Ellie to hit on some of these. But first, as your ministry relations officer, Ellie's going to talk about that. There's a virtual campaign resource we'll share with you, and then the online giving tool that Ellie brought up as well.
And so I am your ministry relations officer. It's a fancy way of saying I'm your regional representative. And if Carl clicks on the map for me.
All right, Will.
There we go. You see under me is my colleague, Alanda Carr, and the two of us together have over 3,600 churches in our region. We have the 2 largest regions. And so our board has approved for us to hire a 10th ministry relations officer. So come July 1, our 10th MRO will begin, and that person will cover the Synod of the Northeast, as well as Donegal and Philadelphia Presbytery. And then my region, which is currently called Northeast, and that includes Pennsylvania, will be Pennsylvania, and then West Virginia, Baltimore, or Maryland over to Delaware. And so keep calling me for now, but if after July 1 you give me a call, I'm gonna connect you with our new MRO, and so glad to serve you. And the positive is it's more boots on the ground. There will be more of us serving in this small area, going from 2 to 3 regions. And if you ever wonder who is my MRO, and you can't remember me or that new person that comes in, you just go to presbyterianfoundation.org, and you can see at the bottom of the page, it will invite you to look up your MRO by zip code. So you just type that in, and that new person will show up after July 1. And prior to then, it will be me. So give me a ring if I can be of support to you with anything related to stewardship, plan giving, or investment options.
Thanks, Ellie. Next, we have this online resource for stewardship campaigns. It's a Presbyterian Foundation tool, but even when you do stewardship year-round, this pledge campaign is likely to remain a part of it, usually during the fall season. So you've got this resource here at stewardshipnavigator.com. And this might be, I just threw this slide up here to represent what the length and some basic elements of a stewardship campaign. Since this is recorded, you can come back and check that out. But online at Stewardship Navigator, it will have specific recommendations. You would go to that site, same one we just mentioned, you would sign up for it. And over on the left in the menu, you'll see annual campaign. Click on that and it will bring you to choose a campaign. And right now, for this kind of conversation, it's called online campaign, which is really going to be turning into more of a hybrid. And if you click on that, that would be your selected campaign. And you'll see that the week 8 and week 7 buttons below each provides ideas and resources to get you started on those ideas. So you can grab these ideas and adapt them to suit your needs. And look there on your left corner at the bottom, that's the MRO. And right now that's Olanda, because this is actually plugged into my area since I'm in Washington, D.C. But if you plugged in your information after July 1st, there will be a new MRO for most people on this call. And up until then, it would be Ellie.
And then
yeah.
Online giving, it's really easy. If your church is not offering online giving, or maybe you're using a more expensive program, It's as simple as filling out a 2-page application and submitting that with a picture of your voided check for the church checking account. And we have 3 dedicated personnel in our home office in Jeffersonville who work strictly with online services. They're Lucy Bryant, Kim Smith, and Jenna Tobe. And so whenever your administrators have a question, all they have to do is dial a toll-free number that goes directly to online services. They don't get caught in a phone tree, and they can answer your questions and provide you support. Or, maybe you leave a message and hearing back from them in 24 hours is you want to hear sooner, feel free to give me a call. And I may be able to answer the questions, but I can certainly fast track those for you. But again, it's wonderful that we have our own team in the home office that are here to support you with your online giving program. We are, oh, go ahead, Carl.
No, bang, there we go. I'll let you finish. I just wanted to thank everyone for allowing me to be a part of your evening, because I'm just thrilled to support you all as you're supporting your congregations, because it's our church. And I just want to thank everyone for their time and all the effort you all are putting in for stewardship. Ellie?
I thank you as well. To show up randomly for an hour on a Wednesday afternoon, I'm trying to think what day of the week it is a big deal. So thank you for your love of your congregation and your dedicated service to be here. Are there questions you have today? I saw a few in the chat and I started answering them, and I can say them out loud too. Steve, you want to feed any of the questions to us?
So there was one question early on when you were talking about the stewardship resources and the narrative budget. And the question is, when would you typically present that to the congregation? Is that during the budgeting process or when you go to give the ask to the congregation?
Great question. So one, when you're doing the ask, I think it's a great time to have that narrative budget, but also when you're presenting your budget. So usually, most churches are on the calendar year. Some churches are on a fiscal year of June or July 1. When you're presenting that budget for the congregation to receive it, remember the session approves the budget, a congregation only receives it. I'd recommend presenting the narrative budget then as well, because the line item budget does not tell what mission and ministry is happening. Now, you might have a few people who get anxious, like you're trying to just move around shelves and not show them everything. Have, a small handful of line items available for the people who love numbers, who are really going to enjoy looking at that. Have that available, you can hand them to them, but I wouldn't mass distribute that line item. Again, you're not trying to hide anything. You're trying to tell the story well so people understand it and don't get glazed over. So have a small stack for those who really love the numbers, but otherwise present that narrative budget at that time as well.
And then there was another question just in terms of you're talking about mobile giving and online giving. What any recommendations for those congregations that are predominantly, where a large percentage are 70 and over and may not be quite as savvy with their cell phones?
Again, I'd really encourage you to look at our program with online giving. Pardon me, it's very easy. And what's nice is that churches who don't have a web page or don't have a Facebook page can still use ours. But it's easy because you can put it at the top of the page, they just click on it. You can send out that link in any e-newsletter that goes out, if they can click on it. And if you have someone who wants to use mobile giving, but they may consider themselves still a bit of a Luddite, do you have some folks on the stewardship committee who'd be happy to walk them through how to do that if they'd like to use that resource?
Good. I'm going to remove our spotlight here so that we can open it up to anyone. If you would just like to unmute yourself. Judy, I see you have a question.
I do, thank you. What is the cost of the online giving? What percentage is taken?
There's no startup or recurring fee. It's simply a 2% transaction charge. Now, if your church also does fee for service, say you have a rummage sale, or you have a preschool that takes tuition, or maybe you do a book study and people are paying for their book, you can have an extra fund on there that's a fee for service, same 2% transaction charge. But because we're a proper foundation, we actually provide the gift receipt. The gift will show up on the bank statement or the credit card statement as a gift to Bound Brook Presbyterian Church, but the gift receipt will come from us and a year-end summary will come from us. But if you do have one fund that's a fee for service, we'll just give them a sales receipt rather than a gift receipt, and then that sale won't show up on their annual report from us.
Is there any reason why a company like Venmo can't be used, which can be done without any expense at all?
Venmo is designed for individuals. They are trying to roll out, nonprofit, but I think that's still in beta. Also, remember, when you do Venmo, you're advertising to everyone you're giving. And some people might like that. But the question is, well, how easy would it be for churches to track it? You know, who the giving is coming from? Do they have a donor address? How will they provide a gift receipt? So you'll want to think about those kind of things.
And
Do you have any other commentary on that, Carl?
I would just add that there are a few places like Venmo, Apple Pay. There's a few really great ideas out there that are not yet available. And I don't know how long they'll be. It would be wonderful. A lot of people are asking, like, hey, what about Venmo? What about Apple Pay? And things like that. Not available this time. There are some pilot programs out there, and the ones that do have pilot programs, there's some good things that people are saying about it. Not yet available. The other thing I will say is, if you have a congregation that's not really into online giving, it's still great to have online giving, but just to have it there. It shouldn't be a big, shouldn't dedicate a whole lot of your year to finding and putting a online giving program. It's pretty easy to get. I mean, I know the Vanco program with the Presbyterian Foundation. That's really easy to sign up for and get a button on your website. It's great to have, but just to make sure that that's an option. But I think it's obvious, but I'll state it anyway. But don't detract from how your congregation, like the whole of your congregation, is comfortable giving. Really honor that, but make this new doorway open. But don't make that your first door. Yeah, that's all I'll say right now. Thanks.
So we have another question in the chat, and this one is, how does your online giving do reporting for churches? For example, someone gives money for pledge, flowers, and a book. Will the church receive a report for each designation separately?
So it all depends on how you set it up. You can have one fund, just general fund, and there's a notes section that people can use, like the memo line on a check. Or you can set up separate funds. You can have a general fund, which I'd always have at the top. You can have up to 9 funds, but I only recommend having 4 or 5 because you don't want donor fatigue where people don't know where to give. So, you know, what are your primary ones? General, mission. You might have 1 great hour of sharing. Now, your administrators can ask for those funds to be taken up or down. It's usually, you know, a business day or less that happens when you fill out the form. So, you know, you can take 1 great hour of sharing down and put Pentecost offering up because it's coming up. And then your administrators have log-on access to both Vanco and a program called InnoView, which is the main program that we use, where they can run reports with data separated values or comma separated values to upload that into your systems. Again, though, because we are receiving and receiving this on your behalf, what a lot of churches do is take advantage of that administrative work we're doing, and they just show an income line item of income from the foundation, and they list the net number that comes in each month, you know, the gifts minus the fees plus any interest earned. So if your administrators do nothing, the money will sit in a money market account till the last business day of the month, or then we swipe it over to your bank account. And depending on your bank, it may take 2 to 3 days to get there. And again, administrators can run those reports with any time frame they want to see what's come in there. And then we do have some churches, though, who are living offering plate to offering plate. So they can simply email onlineservices@presbyterianfoundation.org and request that the swipes happen, those deposits happen weekly instead of once a month. Now, I talked about interest earned. That money does sit in a money market account, and money market accounts aren't paying very much right now. But anything that comes in as interest from that, we do not retain. We forwarded to the church. So usually 2 to 3 months later, you see a few extra cents show up in there. And that's where running that report is so good, to be able to see the gift minus the fee plus any interest that you have. And I'm happy to do a little demonstration or a workshop online with your church. Maybe it's your session or finance committee, to walk through and answer any of their questions about online giving. I can do a live demonstration so you can see what it looks like from the donor's view. I'm happy to do that. Just give me a holler and we'll set that up. Other questions?
If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask. Oh, Judy has another question.
I'm sorry, I always have too many questions. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint that was used?
Absolutely. I'm going to ask Steve. I think he has a registration list. Can you send that to me, Steve?
I will do that, yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And then I'll send an email out. I'll include this PowerPoint. I'll include that Clinton brochure, and I'll include the samples from First Pres Brooklyn, as well as a great bulletin insert on qualified charitable distributions that I'd recommend you either stuff in your bulletin or put on a slide once a quarter for those who are 70 and a half or older. Other questions?
Well, I think we've come to the end of our time now, and there doesn't seem to be any more questions. I just want to thank both of you, Ellie and Carl, for your presentation today. I know that we have learned a lot, and just thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Our pleasure.
A pleasure to be here. Happy
Thank
birthday
you.
to your daughter.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, have a great birthday celebration tonight.
Will do. And thank you all for coming. And as I said, I will give our registration list to them so that they can get those slides out to you. And then we'll also have this recorded. And I imagine that it will be up on our website very soon.
And so
Thank you,
nice to see so many familiar faces. It's great to be here with you again, folks. I will miss you when I'm not officially your MRO, but I'm going to still claim you till July 1.
Give that Ibby a hug from me, Ellie. This is Jane.
She is 7 now, Jane.
I know.
It's crazy. And her little sister just turned 3 on Sunday.